I heard they want the news. Well, we got it just for you. What's your team? Who your player? Who your crew? I heard they want the news. The spotlight is on you, and if you in the hot seat, it's times two. I heard they want the news. Come tune in to the crew, but we got the hookup just like black and blue. I heard they want the news. Spotlight Sports, what it do? Hit subscribe and that like button too. I heard they want the news.
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
All right, let's try it this time. You guys can hear me all right? Give me thumbs up. You guys hear me good? All right, perfect. All right, so anyway, I do apologize for all of the audio difficulty there. But yeah, as I said before, definitely excited for this weekend with NASCAR coming around. Pennzoil 400 is this Sunday. I unfortunately won't be there, but love to be there. So you're going to be catching a lot of the NASCAR action, of course. But we got a lot to talk about here on the network. So let's just start off with this because of the fact of there's just been so much rumored news going on all around about Kyler Murray and what's been happening now for the last couple of days. So as we said before, Kyler Murray completely just cleans out everything on the on his social media that involved Arizona Cardinals. They haven't been able to get extension talks. And right now, things just aren't looking good for Arizona. Let me give you a few things. Now, times have changed in the way we've done business because social media era is here. Lots of things have definitely changed from the way that we communicate. And so when it comes to things aren't looking bright, things don't seem to be satisfying at least one worker in a company, you got to find ways to fix it. But the only way I look at this with the Kyler Murray situation of Arizona is that he wants to stay in Arizona as long as the money itself shows. And to me, I honestly think of two things. This is where I have the ownership of the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray. Let's start with Kyler. Kyler was drafted as a number 1 overall pick in 2019. And the Arizona Cardinals found their franchise quarterback after a complete stinker from the previous season with Josh Rosen and with head coach Steve Wilkes. And they're hoping that Kyler would be the focal point this organization needs, and so on and so forth. And Kyler right now, as you've seen, is remarkable. Has a great deep ball throw, runs, scrambles, and is a guy that's willing to open the pocket up. But the other part, though, what I think is kind of a bad showing, is it's not, look, the social media, mainstream media crap, I could care less about. And I'd rather not even worry about, cleaning up all of this social media stuff of the Arizona Cardinals, but knowing you are part of an organization and you are your own person. Your choices are your choices. But when it comes to putting tensions on the table, this social media stuff is just kind of childish. And so for Kyler, if you think cleaning out all the social media is really going to end up standing out, that the Cardinals are going to put out an extension, doesn't really work like that. If the Cardinals are not physically talking to you, actually putting you in the building, having, a closed door conversation with you, then I got nothing. For the Arizona Cardinals now that I put up here on the pedestal, you have been a franchise for years and years and years that have come up close but have no cigar. And here's what's interesting about this. Arizona thought they found their franchise quarterback when they drafted Josh Rosen 10th in the draft. And they said a lot of really good things. That he's a guy that could throw very good, very accurate out of UCLA. There were some positives there. And Steve Wilkes, mind you, he is a real good head coach. The fact of the matter is, Arizona never gave him that actual chance. So instead, clean house, get a new quarterback, get a new head coach, and let's see how things work out. The first 2 seasons, pretty rocky. This past year, Cardinals make the playoffs, but then get their asses handed to by the LA Rams. And here's what's the downfall for the Cardinals. Because in the end, The Cardinals never fixed their offensive line. The only piece is that Rodney Hudson, when he was with the Raiders, never allowed a sack to Derek Carr. Never allowed one. That's a big piece. The rest of it all, they have never fixed up their problems. And you expect Josh Rosen to be your franchise quarterback, get you out of danger, and all the rest of the stuff. I'm not saying that Josh Rosen was a good quarterback. There were a lot of struggles from him, and I could consider it Arizona was probably not the ideal place for him. So in comes Kyler Murray, number 1 overall pick, and Lincoln Riley shaped up exactly what his game plan is. And you know what's funny about this? At the Cardinals, what they don't tell you is that when Kyler scrambles, his winning record is so much better. So in the end, Kyler Murray, anytime he runs the football around, his winning percentage is great. But when he's not scrambling around on the field and he's completely under duress in the pocket and has no time to throw, plus he doesn't even have all of his weapons like DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, or even Rondale Moore. When he doesn't have anybody that he can end up throwing to, his record shows for itself. What would you expect Kyler Murray or Josh Rosen to do when they're under duress with a horrible offensive line? They have no time to throw. It's a pendulum swing from here. But honestly, this is how I picture it. If I'm the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray is my franchise quarterback, period. I am not stating anything else. I am not going to state anything else about Kyler Murray. I know what he's capable of. He runs, he throws really good deep ball. And he's a guy that is willing to be coachable and is a guy that is willing to fix up any mistakes. But the problem of it is when you have an organization that doesn't really fix the problem, which is offensive line, and we've been saying this now for the last couple of years. And by the way, Cliff Kingsbury was on the hot seat this past year. That's why they needed to be successful. And they did the second they got J.J. Watt, the second they ended up getting a couple of really good veterans. And James Conner was really, really good. When the second he left Pittsburgh and came to Arizona, he was much better, much better. So they found their running back that they know stays healthy. And regardless of what you're saying, because, well, he didn't have DeAndre Hopkins. So what? I mean, didn't stop Matthew Stafford from going to the Super Bowl, losing OBJ, losing Robert Woods. He had Cooper Kupp, and he had Van Jefferson, and he had a couple of other really good wide receivers. The fact of the matter is this. If you're a quarterback that is willing to make plays under duress, you're a special type quarterback. Look at the rest of the league. This should be eye-openers for you, Arizona. What did the Chargers do the year after they had the most horrible offensive line? They had a rookie quarterback in Justin Herbert. And regardless of whatever weapons he had, he still managed to end up making plays. Look at what happened last year. They upgraded offensive line. They know how much better it looks. They're just a few pieces away from becoming serious problems in the AFC. They become a serious problem in the AFC. How about the Buffalo Bills? Josh Allen, franchise quarterback, need to end up making sure the offensive line can protect him. And the kid is already he's strong. He's strong. He's willing to get through anything. But they protect him. Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. They give him a real good offensive line. We know that he can run, and he's remarkable at it. And he can throw. For those of you who still think he's a running back, Patrick Mahomes. They got completely exposed in the previous Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What did they do? Upgrade offensive line. So Chiefs, upgrade offensive line. Chargers, upgrade offensive line. Bills, upgrade offensive line. Even the Rams, upgrade offensive line. The 49ers in your division, upgrade offensive line. This is not new, Arizona. The fact of the matter is, you have a franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray, and I would pay him exactly whatever it takes to making sure he is the franchise quarterback He's making all of the special plays that we need, even the plays that matter. And at the same time, he's leading the Cardinals to victory. And everyone follows him. So Arizona, I'd be fixing the offensive line pronto. Because even with Josh Rosen, even with Kyler Murray, both quarterbacks were under duress. And it's not helping your cause. Not one bit. But that's what I would do if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, because the Rams are getting better. They just won a Super Bowl. The 49ers, you can't sleep on them. Whether it's Trey Lance, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, or any other quarterback that comes into San Francisco, you can't sleep on them when they're healthy. Seattle, they're kind of in the point of this may be Russell Wilson's final year, and they may end up looking at a different quarterback, but you've got the advantage. You've got the advantage. And those are the only two teams that are giving you problems. So, I mean, if we want to be brutally honest, what's going on? Shout out to Beantown Breakdown, my good friend Bobby up over there. And by the way, Bobby, I got a bone to pick with you, especially with the fact that the Golden Knights and the Bruins were playing and the Bruins kicked our asses. So I've got a bone to pick with you, but I'm glad to hear that things are going great. So shout out to Bobby, and we're still hoping and praying for you, buddy. And I'm glad that you are definitely beating this thing to a pulp, because I know you're a fighter, man, and I know you're going to get past all of this. So I'm very happy, and we're all pulling for you, man. Max Coverage, what's going on? BL, of course, always up and in here, one of the realists here. Coach Dante, and of course, Key in the building. She's going to be joining me here in just a little bit to be discussing Sixers, and Jeremy Case, my good friend. So, by the way, let's talk about the Sixers. So I've got Key in the building coming in a couple of minutes, and we're going to be talking a lot of Philadelphia stuff, Sixers, Eagles, so much more. First of all, how did that feel, Philadelphia? How did that feel with James Harden's debut? That got to feel great, right? I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And this is only telling you like three different things. That's what the trade itself was giving you. Because once the trade was done between Philadelphia and Brooklyn, only three things were on the table. One, Philadelphia and James Harden would be thriving, and Ben Simmons would be declining. And Brooklyn would have serious problems. Philly would have been just fine. They would have brushed it away. They would have said, forget about Ben Simmons. We got James Harden, even better. Or James Harden would have struggled in Philadelphia, and Ben Simmons would have thrived in Brooklyn. And Philly fans probably would rip Ben Simmons, and they probably would rip James Harden, and probably rip the whole city of Philadelphia down. But instead, that didn't happen. Or it could have been both James Harden and Ben Simmons are thriving in different places. Philly fans would have been like, good for Ben, that he's playing better. And James Harden loves it in Philadelphia. Man. Philly fans, you gotta be feeling great, man. So the fact of the matter is, in this case for the Sixers, and I'm gonna have Key in the building join me here in a little bit, but this has to feel great. The fact that you're no longer dealing with any type of drama or anything that has to deal with that, you got a contract or a player holding you back from chances of winning the championship. I mean, you had to do whatever you could. You had a trade before with Sacramento, with Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton, and a couple of other picks. It could have been legitimate enough, but it wasn't enough. They needed shooters. Remember a couple of years back, before getting Daryl Morey in the building to fix this thing, the Sixers were like, oh, we got size. We got tall guys. We got guys that can defend. Well, that's great. But in the end, you need shooters. That's what this league is all about. Steph Curry, legitimate shooter. Klay Thompson, legitimate shooter. Damian Lillard, legitimate shooter. You got shooters everywhere from left to right. And you got to have that in order to keep up in this league. So they had to get rid of some pieces. And think about it in the end. It really was not all that bad. Seth Curry could hurt, but he was giving you at least 20 points a night. And then there was Andre Drummond and a couple of others. This worked out great for Philadelphia. And James Harden, I mean, look at him. He's happy. He's happy. And Philadelphia is a hard town. You either got thick skin or you don't belong in Philadelphia at all. And I think this is exactly what James Harden needed. Because he knows deep down he's not a leader, but he's somebody that's going to give you really good points and he's going to give you minutes. And for Joel Embiid, this has to feel great. He doesn't have to rip any of his teammates. He doesn't have to feel like we ain't got a sure shot. Now I think it's championship or bust at this point for the Sixers. They are my favorite now for the Eastern Conference Finals. I can't go with NBA Finals just yet because there are a couple teams in the East that could be giving the Sixers problems. I mean, Milwaukee may be one of them. There's a couple others I can think of off the top of my head, but in the end, I'm going to enjoy watching the Sixers because now all that congestion that was building up, all that drama, it's all lifted off your shoulders, and this has to feel great for Sixers fans. James Harden looks happy, and even from his performance in his debut, that's what you got to feel excited about, Philly. This was, I can honestly say, could be the missing link. And I know a lot of people, and I've been hearing it all over the place, that I could be trading all these pieces away and I don't even have to have a bench and I could still make the championship. I honestly would correct you on that. You got to have a decent bench because if somebody gets hurt at the worst timing, you don't know what you're going to do afterward. And I think the Sixers have exactly those places. They got the pieces. Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle. They've got a bunch of players. And most of them are role players. They may not be good on one end, but they're very good on the other. And it's situational basketball. Doc Rivers knows this. But I think Philadelphia is going to be a serious problem in the Eastern Conference going into the playoffs. And I think it would be great to watch them. Because I'd be watching more of the Eastern Conference than I would be of the West. And let's be honest. I'm watching Phoenix. I'm watching Utah. I'm watching a bunch of other teams playing really, really good. And that's because of the fact the Lakers, they just lost their identity. They don't look so good. But if I'm seeing that in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to be pretty much gluing my eyes to the television watching the East. Because I think that's going to be more exciting than I think the West would. Respectfully so. Coming up next. So I'm going to be breaking down a little bit of the Dallas Cowboys situation with likely to release. It's no longer releasing now. Now it's a trade scenario for Amari Cooper. And I'm going to be explaining that because I honestly think it's a bad idea if you are Dallas. I wouldn't be giving up the one target that really gives the best for Dak Prescott. And also in a little bit, we got Key in the building coming on. It's a 2-hour show, guys. We are so jam-packed with so much more to talk about with everything happening from the NHL, NBA, more latest news on Major League Baseball's lockout. So I'm going to end up explaining all of that here coming up next. We're filled. And also at the bottom of the second hour, we've got our playoff picture that I'm going to be discussing here in a little bit coming up next. All right, guys, you've heard me talk about it for so long now, and this has been by far one of the best apps I have ever downloaded and I've ever played, and it's getting bigger and better than ever. You guys love sports, you guys love betting, and you guys love hanging out with your friends, maybe getting a couple cold ones. Well, now there's an app for that you could be enjoying everything that I just explained from there. And plus, you'd be making money sharing the app with your friends, family, coworkers, and so much more. All of you that love sports, because sports is all about unifying. And this is the app that does it better. It's called Super Draft Pro. And Super Draft Pro is now getting even bigger with introducing the brand new sportsbook app and new feature on SuperDraft Pro. In the sportsbook, just like any that you would go to here in Vegas, you definitely would get all of your sports bet lines. Plus, there's player prop bets who would be going over or under on certain statistics. You can bet on that. Plus, too, the more and more sport coins that you end up getting on SuperDraft, you could be winning up to thousands of different prizes, different gift cards, and so much more. And as I mentioned before, when you end up signing up, use my link in the description as well to getting you guys signed up. And I'll be explaining a lot more from that from yours truly in person. So what are you waiting for? Go online, and it's all on the App Store and, of course, on Google Play. Download it on your mobile device. Sign up like a pro, pick like a pro, play like a pro, share like a pro with all of your friends and coworkers and so much more with Super Draft Pro. And when you sign up, it's superdraftpro.com. Available now on Google Play and the App Store.
Ain't shit you can tell me, I'm a Raider. Ain't shit you can tell me, I'm so nation. No matter the location, from OAK, LA to LV, I'm a Raider. Ain't shit you can tell me, I'm a Raider. Ain't shit you can tell me, I'm so nation. No matter the location. This got that 80.
Bitch, I'm a ball, bitch, I'm a ball. Don't get no ball, don't get no ball. What's in my cup? What's in my cup? Full of that punch, look at that punch. Bitch, I'm a ball, ballin' like Kobe. Ho, keep it moving, cause you do not know me. Bitch, I'm a ball, ballin' like Kobe. Ho, keep it moving, cause you do not know me. Bitch, I'm a ball, can't talk in Milwaukee. Tell my dog sick of me, ain't do no barking. Pass me some greens, you know I'ma spark it. Mama got ass, told her to arch it. Pull up at the spot, hop out and don't park it. Bino say, always keep one in the cartridge. With Joey out pepper, so we going toxic. Came from the swamp to visit the tropics. Check out the scenery. Tell lil' mama to the backwoods right by the lake.
Pressure. Some on this gas get hectic. Up on my bitch in the best shit. Wanna act goofy, stretch quick. Pressure. Some on this gas get hectic. Up on my bitch in the best shit. Wanna act goofy, stretch quick.
Alrighty, folks. Well, you've heard it from us as well. We got brand new gear from hats, hoodies, t-shirts, accessories, and so much more when you shop on the Spotlight Sports gear. Get yourselves pick up some stuff. Shop, of course, for all of your favorite shows here on the network, and shop for for your favorite network as well. And we got so much cool stuff that we'd love to showcase to you guys. So definitely check it out, the spotlightsportsgear.com. And when you guys end up receiving your stuff, definitely send in your photos and we will definitely shout all of you guys out. We thank all of you guys for your support. And of course, thank you guys for always tuning in and watching us here on the Spotlight Sports Network. So the latest that we ended up getting just before we bring Kia in the building back up on here. So this just happened literally this morning that the Dallas Cowboys had announced that they were likely to release Amari Cooper. And now things have changed that now that they're looking to trade him away. So I like the fact of not releasing him because of the fact of even though he has $20 million in the cap, I wouldn't release him because I would still at least get something. But in this case, let me tell you why that this is a bad idea for the Dallas Cowboys. I would not be trading the one wide receiver at all that has been bringing out the best in Dak Prescott. Because if you actually look at both the split numbers between Dak and Amari when they're both on the field and when Dak's the quarterback and Amari's not there, the numbers themselves don't lie. Dak is a completely different quarterback from that. Now, I will say this, that the Cowboys, we know are going to be thinking of a lot of things throughout this offseason. I mean, the first I would think of is, let's be honest, Ezekiel Elliott. That's one player that I know that has had a history of injuries, has not exactly looked the same. He's gotten a little slower by the time, the injuries started picking up. But Tony Pollard has shown a lot of flashes where he's explosive, somebody that I could probably build around. And the Cowboys know exactly how to shape their running backs. I mean, over the years, from as long as I have watched, Julius Jones, Marion Barber, Felix Jones, Darren McFadden, Alfred Morris, and also Zeke. Now we're here with Tony Pollard. And they've got a lot to think about in their money space because they're paying a lot of good players big-time money, which I think I wouldn't go about my business like this. If I'm the Cowboys, I wouldn't get rid of Amari. Because if it's really helping Dak Prescott to have a reliable wide receiver, even though I have my thoughts on Amari Cooper, that I think he can be better than what he says, but I wouldn't get rid of him. You look at all the wide receiver options you have. The only person I would have walk is Michael Gallup. I wouldn't be hurt if Michael Gallup ended up walking and tried the free agent market. Because then that means you've got CeeDee Lamb, you've got Cedric Wilson, and you could possibly go and draft yourself a wide receiver option that you could build up through the draft. So there's plenty of options for the Dallas Cowboys. And they're really not the team that's that far away of really being competitive. But I do think at times they've really got to be logical when it comes to certain moves. But to me, I wouldn't move Amari Cooper. I would probably let Zeke go and test the market. And here's the other part. The Giants are willing to get rid of Saquon Barkley. So even if you have Tony Pollard as your running back and somebody that's at least inexpensive, that has had a history of injuries, but is looking for a change of scenery, I think Saquon could work for Dallas. It would save your money's worth, and you wouldn't have to pay him long-term unless he really does perform at his absolute best. Because the Giants right now are a laughingstock. Washington, they need a new quarterback. And Philadelphia is your only competition. So if you're Dallas, I'd be doing the right thing here. I would not be worried about Amari. I would let Michael Gallup test the market and keep CeeDee Lamb and Cedric Wilson and probably work a wide receiver through the draft. Because then eventually, what you also could do with that money? You could probably shoot to maybe getting Dalton Schultz because of after the news with Blake Jarwin, they're going to need a tight end. They're going to need to get better at their offensive line because it's not going to last for long. And you'll have Tony Pollard. You could probably shoot for a different running back, at least an option one that could be a secondary wide receiver if you need it. But I would not waste my time with as far as needing to shred money off the cap. I mean, that's exactly what, what the Jones family should be doing. They would not be paying high, big bucks to just average players. You got to work this thing right. Because at the same time, I love Micah Parsons. I think he's had a really, really good rookie year. He's going to be such a problem in the NFC. And as far as Trayvon Diggs goes, good corner, but could use some more help. At least fix up that secondary. But this whole thing about releasing Amari Cooper, bad idea, and trading him away, if you're going to get yourself at least a star wide receiver, you better hope that that's in the cards. But until then, I wouldn't get rid of Amari. I'd be getting rid of Zeke and Michael Gallup, and those are the only two players to help with your cap cause and start fixing that offensive line, give more options. That's what I would do. All right, so you see Key in the building all the time here on the Spotlight Sports Network when she talks all about Philly, and that's the Flyers, the Phillies, the Eagles, and the Philadelphia 76ers. And we've got a lot to talk about, especially with the newly acquired Philadelphia 76er. And so she is joining me backstage live via the Global Satellite Network, presented by StreamYard. It's Key in the building. So that's got to feel great for Philadelphia, doesn't it? That's got to feel great for James Harden in his debut, smiling, laughing, enjoying himself. Like, what was your reaction the second you saw the trade, and now with it panning out with his debut, that this has to feel good for 76ers fans?
So this whole time I'm like, Daryl, he's not trading Ben. We just gonna keep Ben. We gonna wait till the off season, because that was the whole thing throughout this whole process. Oh, we're gonna wait till the off season. Oh, we're only gonna caliber star back for him. I'm like, Daryl, not trading him. I'm watching. I'm like, it's the last day. All notifications going off. Oh, Halliburton goes here. Such and such goes here. I'm like, Daryl, you're not pulling the trigger. Like, what are we doing? So I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh snap. He actually did it. And I had to apologize to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, Daryl. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, sir, that you would move Ben Simmons out of here. I mean, everybody's like, oh, well, we lost Seth and Andre Drummond. I get it. Seth was a sometimey shooter. Some games he'll give you 20 and plus. Some games you might get 7 or 10 from him. Andre Drummond was a good backup for Joel Embiid. He don't score very much, but he can grab rebounds, and he's a good passer to be a big man. So most Philly fans is all gripe and hurt about that, but I don't think they worrying about that Ben, Seth, or Andre right now.
Yeah. No, and this has been a really, really good thing for the Sixers, because I hear this over and over and over again, and I think it kind of gets a little annoying and irritating, but people are saying, like, if you're trading away all these all these pieces just to go and get one big name, and if that big name does not pan out, you're kind of screwed. And then saying, you've got no bench, but they kind of miss the ball here, is that the fact of, I like with what Philly's doing right now, the fact that they have star players, Joel Embiid, James Harden, and they have a decent bench. They don't have a great bench, but they have a decent bench that plays very, very good. Is this kind of something that's really heightens their chances of potentially chasing for a championship?
I mean, if our starters are playing well enough and our bench comes in and does well, I'm okay for that. I see us going far, but right now our bench is a little bit inconsistent. Yeah. Furkan Korkmaz hasn't been shooting the best this season. We did move Danny Green to the bench. Danny Green's a good corner specialist. What else Danny Green has to prove? He has 3 championships in himself. But he's also a good defender. George Niang came over from Utah. Another good bench player shooter. He's a 3-and-D type of guy. He can get the basket. Shake Milton. And then we got DeAndre Jordan as well. DeAndre Jordan, we got him. So I think that we should be okay. We just need one of those guys to get the spark off the bench. I think it will be okay.
Key in the building, joining me here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So, looking at it from the outside on, the possible playoff picture, because I'm going to be doing that in the bottom half of the second hour, giving my first ever playoff prediction before, going down a couple more times. But I think looking at the Eastern Conference, I'd be more excited watching this because of the fact that Philadelphia made moves. Miami's kind of staying red hot. I mean, Tyler Hero's having a great year. Chicago changed up a lot of things during the offseason. And then there's Milwaukee. I wouldn't be too concerned as far as Charlotte, Brooklyn, and a couple of other teams on the bottom, except for maybe Toronto. Are there any teams that you can kind of think of that if the playoffs started today, that could be giving Philadelphia some problems?
Let's see. So right now, I believe the top 6, because the 7 through 10 is that play-in tournament slot. So Chicago is number 2, but they've been struggling a little bit. No lines of ball. Caruso's out. So it's just DeRozan's trying to carry and hang in there with them. Levine when he's healthy. So it's Chicago, and then it's us. Then it's Cleveland, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Milwaukee, and then Boston. Now, Boston has peaked at the right time, but Jaylen Brown is hurt. So that means Jason Tatum got to carry that load. I want to say Chicago. I want to say Miami probably be our biggest test. I mean, we've beaten Milwaukee before Harden got here. So even with Harden on the team now, it's just going to be crazy. I want to say Miami. Jimmy hasn't really been shooting all that well. He's not a good 3-point shooter. I think he's 19% from the field this year. Mm-hmm. So like you said, Tyler Hero's been making a big impact. We got Bam over there and Kyle Lowry. I think Miami's going to be our biggest test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree because I truly think that Miami would be one series that I think everybody would be gluing their eyes to the television for sure. I think Milwaukee sometimes kind of has their chances, but knowing you got regular season and you got, playoff Milwaukee that we saw last year winning the championship. And then, Chicago just kind of came right up at the right time, making the great moves that they needed to get themselves back on the map. But I'm with you on Boston, and I'm with you on a couple of other teams. I think they'd be close, but not enough to where they could possibly move on to a potential championship round. Let's talk a little bit about Ben Simmons now at this point. Now the trade is over, and he's in Brooklyn. There's a lot of speculations, as far as could he be better in a new place, and having, Kevin Durant, who's been, you kind of look at both these players, him and Kyrie Irving. I mean, if this doesn't work out well, and I've said this, I feel like this should be the time that Kevin Durant really needs to think about his future in Brooklyn. Your thoughts post now with Ben Simmons as a Brooklyn Net?
It ain't making no difference. He's not on the court yet. He's out with back soreness. With back soreness, you haven't done anything to have back soreness. And so I don't understand why you're not. I would think because you're out of Philadelphia, you want to play. You want to prove that it's not you. It was Philadelphia making you seem like you can't play. But you don't even when you're going to get on the court. They don't even know if they're going to see you in the whole month of March. So what are we doing here? Kevin Durant is carrying the Nets team right now. Kyrie, he can't play home games. They was talking about the mandate in New York. Even if they do lift that, he still won't be able to play, which is weird. Some strange loophole there. KD can't do it by himself, and there's no James Harden now. So who is going to be that second scorer when Kyrie's not there? Steph Curry, okay, yeah, he can get the hot hand, but who else is there? He really doesn't have anybody. So KD might want to have to think about his future. I mean, you got Blake Griffin, you got Aldridge, but those are some older guys. With Bruce Brown, they're not going to get it together. And even when they did have all three, you never really saw all three of them on the court at the same time. So, KD's in a bad situation. He did come back yesterday, scored 30 plus points, but the Nets still lost.
Yeah, this is just right now such a handful, especially for head coach Steve Nash. I mean, the fact that having to deal with, all of this drama, and then all of a sudden now it's just they break it up. They hadn't even seen all three of them up on the same place, on the court. And now it's just kind of, you're blowing this whole thing up. I agree with you on that. Key in the building, joining me here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Let's talk a little bit about Philadelphia Eagles now, because I know there were some rumored speculations about, should the Eagles trade for Russell Wilson? I say no, because the fact that, Jalen Hurts, he showed you spurts of what he can do. And I wouldn't give up on a product like that. I think they do need to go and get themselves a legitimate wide receiver next to Devontae Smith, because we've seen what happened with Jalen Reagor, not looked so good. They need to upgrade that linebacking core. When you saw the rumors, I think this was kind of more hysterical to me. But what would you say right now is the focal point that should be focused on for the Philadelphia Eagles?
So, of course, who would not want a Russell Wilson on a team? Great leadership. He's a hard worker. He's a leader. He has the arm strength still. He's still one of the top 10 elite quarterbacks in this league. But I'm not going to put my eggs all on one basket for one guy. Right. Four first-round draft picks, including 3 this year and next year, when we got linebacker issues and safety issues and everything, and another wide receiver issues, you want to throw a quarterback in when we don't have all these holes patched up. Don't know what Jason Kelsey's going to do. Is he coming back? Is he not? But I think he might be coming back for 1 year. Then we got to worry about his replacement. I'm not sold on a QB. And then you got Howie Roseman looking at Sam Howell. Why are we even thinking about looking at quarterbacks? Why? If it's a quarterback, it better be a backup to back up Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, seriously.
So we our linebacking core absolutely was abysmal. Singleton, don't get me wrong, I like his story and all. He wasn't it. TJ Edwards, okay, he was okay. He was one bright spot. Singleton was all over the field. He can get you tackles, but he's not the best in coverage. We still got some secondary issues. Don't know if Rodney McLeod's coming back. Anthony Harris and Steven Nelson, they were all rentals. All we got is Darius Slay. So there's some good secondary guys in free agency we can go after. There's Marcus Williams. There's Tyrann Mathieu. There's J.C. Jackson. There's all these guys out there in the free agency and in the draft that you want to take a spot on that we can get. But I'm hoping and praying. Howie Roseman is on his last year as GM, and he's trying to get an extension. So that means if he's going to go out with a bang and save his job, or I don't know, I'm so scared to death of what he's going to do. Like, we have 3 first-round picks, and his record is he's going to mess something up.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, anything that can happen in the mind of Howie Roseman, honestly, but I agree with you when it comes to the Eagles that, like I said, I really would not give up on a product like Jalen Hurts. I don't know why that this was even a speculation to even begin with, because with all those picks and then throwing in Darius Slay, I thought, come on, that's not something I would literally tamper with. But I agree with the linebacking core, and the secondary needs to be better because, I mean, they showed spurts. They're a running team, and so that gives me a speculation too, because Miles Sanders, I believe, is testing the free agent market, I think. And
he's his 3rd year. Around your third year rookie deal, this is when you start getting extension talks.
Yeah.
The Eagles, the one thing I think they're smart about this right now, not giving him an extension because he hasn't really been on the field that much. He's injury, you might say he's injury prone, but still he's a good runner. And I think they're going to wait out this year just to see what he does. Now, if he produces and he's scored. Now, the thing about him like this last season was great runner, couldn't get in the end zone. Could not find a touchdown. He had good numbers. He just ain't had no touchdowns. He was hurt. We got a good offensive line. Sirianni got it together in the later weeks to run the football. Oh, let me run the ball now. It's effective. We went to the playoffs with running the ball, and then we got to Tampa Bay, and he went back to his week 2 self of not running the ball. So, I mean, I would love to have I would love to have Miles Sanders here. We got Boston Scott. I think he might be a free agent. We still got Kenneth Gainwell, our running back we got from Memphis. He showed sparks too. He's going to be here. As far as Jordan Howard's more of that third down get you some yards, bowling ball with feet type of guys, I would not mind getting another running back that size and caliber. Think about we went to the Super Bowl, we had LeGarrette Blunt, Jay Ajayi, those guys that has more power.
Mhm.
I don't. If I'm Howie, like I seen a scenario somewhere that was like we trade Miles Sanders, go after Leonard Fournette. I'll go for that.
Mhm.
If it's the right scenario, I'll take a Leonard Fournette Super Bowl. He got the size, he still got the speed. We got a good offensive line. We can block for him. We got Kenneth Gainwell. He's another fast guy out the backfield. I wouldn't mind that.
God, I can only imagine, like, if Leonard Fournette was a Philadelphia Eagle, that gives me all LeGarrette Blunt vibes. Because a guy that with that kind of strength and a guy that can still at a great age too, that the fact that you're giving him, at least when he's healthy, he's going to give you the rushing yards, he's going to give you exactly the scores, and something that's going to help out this running back core, because we haven't seen a better running back core than since the Super Bowl run, and even before that with Brian Westbrook. And so it's really something interesting. There's a lot of different speculations with the Eagles, but hopefully, as you said, like Howie's potential last year, he's going to go out with something. And if it works out great, maybe extensions will talk. But if not, then maybe it's kind of something that they need to have a change within the locker room and within the culture in order for them to get back to where they want to be. But yeah, I'm very excited of it. One last thing too, because I know we don't pay attention to a lot of the Flyers, but what's the latest right now on Claude Giroux?
Ah, Jesus, we not talk about the Flyers. Well, he's he's the longest reigning Flyer that's been here. He's on his last year of his 8-year deal. I believe he's almost at 1,000 games with the Flyers. If I'm not mistaken, last time I checked, he was like 993. So he's almost at 1,000 games with us. It's ultimately up to him if he wants to stay or go. Honestly, I think Claude deserves a better opportunity at a championship. I know we had that one year around the bubble when we was the hottest team in hockey, and then we seen I forget who we lost to, Tampa Bay, and or the Lightning was the Islanders, one of them, and we went all downhill from there. So I mean, we had a lot of assets picked up. We had Ryan Ellis, Cam Atkinson, that's my guy right there. And it was just he's very underrated coming from Columbus. Like, no, I love Cam Atkinson. It's just we got hurt with injuries this year. It's ridiculous. At least I can say we're not the worst team in hockey, Canadians. So I'll take not being the worst team in hockey, but definitely some changes need to be made. I won't be mad if Giroux gets traded and overall leaves. I mean, we definitely would get something back for him. Just gotta rebuild now. But Claude definitely, if he decides, I want to stay and help rebuild, that's good. But if he wants to go, I would not be mad if he left.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, Claude Giroux, longtime Philadelphia Flyer, and somebody that really was very impactful. And I was very questionable after the last 2 seasons seeing Claude Giroux, whether or not this was going to be right there at the end of it. But he's been having a much better year. He's actually looked a lot more like himself. But it'll be interesting to see what the coming days are, because knowing where Philadelphia, they got hit with injuries. I almost anticipate with all of the moves they made, this could be a healthier next year for them, hopefully, but only time will tell. I appreciate you having you on up over here, Key. Where can all of our viewers find you as well here along with the Spotlight Sports Network? Because I know you got a lot of great things to show for, especially when it comes to Philly sports.
Well, of course, I'm always on the Spotlight Sports Network. Always find me in somebody's chat somewhere. I'm starting to get a little famous. I do go in other people's chats. So hit me up anytime y'all watching collabs. I just don't talk about Philly sports. I do it all. But no, you can definitely find me on YouTube, Key in the Building, same as Twitter and IG, all Key in the Building. So again, you can find me somewhere. I'm always around. I'm always in the building.
She's always in the building with us. Anytime when Spotlight Sports Network goes live, she's always there with us. Thank you so much, Key. I appreciate it. Have a good one, and we'll definitely talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Key in the building there from here on the Spotlight Sports Network, man. I was very excited seeing And she's absolutely right. I mean, with obviously with James Harden and with the Philadelphia 76ers, I agree. I think this has been a great thing. And this now ups their chances of making the playoffs for one, and maybe getting deeper into the playoffs where it's an Eastern Conference championship. So I really, really do love how all of this panned out for the Sixers. As far as for the Eagles go, I think it's great. I think this is something that the Eagles really need to focus more on. I wouldn't even tamper with the Russell Wilson thing. As I mentioned before, I think he'll play out his last year in Seattle before he even makes his move of where he wants to go now. But yeah, we got a lot of really, really good stuff. All right, coming up next, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the Vegas Golden Knights and why Vegas fans right now should be very concerned about the Golden Knights potentially losing their chances of making the playoffs. All right, guys. Well, you heard me say it before, too. Merchandise is on sale 15% off through March 9th. Get yourself some gear, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, accessories, and so much more. It's on the SpotlightSportsGear.com page. Shop for your favorite network and, of course, your favorite shows from the network as well. Love to showcase all of your guys' stuff. When you do end up getting all of your merchandises, definitely send it a picture and we'll shout you out. We'll show you off up on all of our social medias. And thank you all for your guys' love and support for the network and all the shows on the network as well. At SpotlightSportsGear.com, 15% off now till March 9th. Couple of shows that we've got here on the Spotlight Sports Network, including this one here as Path to the Draft. Our good friends Eric and Dante, as they will be hosting the show. You can catch them on the Spotlight Sports Network. That is Path to the Draft, as we're already 2 days in with the scouting combine, and they are just the guys to give you all the speculations on all of the new up-and-coming college athletes ready to become NFL pros. Well, I love those guys, and I love watching every episode of it because it just gives me speculations of every one of the players, and a lot of it, I'll be talking a lot more about Malik Willis, but man, what a great combine he's had. I think he's kind of somebody that could really, really stand out in this year's draft. I wouldn't be completely brushing away for Malik Willis, especially after that day. What's going on, Warzone Sports Network? What's happening, man? So I want to talk about something, though, that I think is very important. And I live here in Las Vegas. I hear it all from all of the news, all of and just all over, different journalisms, different news talks about where the Vegas Golden Knights are right now. And it's not looking great. It is not looking great. I was watching it all last night while I was having sushi with a real good friend of mine and, of course, my girlfriend. And all I can tell you right now, I've seen this now for far too long. And the Golden Knights are not exactly the same team as most people had anticipated. This team has fallen apart with injuries. And they've fallen apart with inconsistencies. Right now, as you look at the Western Conference, you have the Colorado Avalanche, St. Louis Blues, and the Minnesota Wild all up top on the Central. And in the Pacific, you have Calgary Flames, LA Kings, Edmonton Oilers, and in the wild card, it's Nashville and Vegas. In the second card, while other teams are creeping in, Dallas, Anaheim, Vancouver, and they've already lost 6 straight out of the 8 games. This is not good for the Golden Knights. In the previous 4 seasons, we're in season 5 now, they still have not figured out their problem. Inconsistent passing, too much puck and go, and they're not really trusting a whole lot of their pieces. Jack Eichel, they've traded a bunch of pieces to going and picking him up, and I do think he's been really fun to watch. But right now, as you've been seeing, goaltending has not been as solid as people think. It's kind of taken a little bit of the backseat, and we're already in the second half of hockey. We're already getting ready to push for the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I can tell you right now, this is a desperation mode if you're the Vegas Golden Knights. The most embarrassing thing, though, too, because I've watched all through this year, and Montreal right now is by far the worst in the NHL, next to the Arizona Coyotes. But Montreal made it to the Stanley Cup final last year, and they completely unloaded. They unloaded a lot of big-time talents. Carey Price ended up having to retire, and he's not coming back for quite some time. And they fired their head coach, Deschamps, and in comes Martin St. Louis, who I believe would change a lot of what Montreal is. I think it would make them better. But this has got to be such an embarrassing and sinking feeling for the Vegas Golden Knights. You had an opportunity with the health in place, with the players who were getting red hot, and you lost it. And now Montreal is by far the worst team in the NHL. And you're close to almost getting upsetted and out of that second wild card spot. While all the rest of the teams in Colorado is playing lights out, they're a team that anticipates to winning the Stanley Cup this year because of the fact of Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Gabriel Landeskog, and so many others. Even Nazem Kadri has been having a hell of a year. Yeah, I've been paying attention to it for quite some time. Colorado has been very, very aggressive. St. Louis has stayed consistent as much as they possibly could, but not exactly the same team. And I love a lot of those guys. Ryan O'Reilly, Torrey Krug, Vladimir Tarasenko and Jordan Binnington. Calgary right now has been playing really good hockey for a good stretch. Johnny Gaudreau got back to himself. They acquired Tyler Toffoli, which was a big acquisition for them to getting back into the playoffs. And then the LA Kings, who in the last 2 seasons missed the playoffs, and they've had to at least take a couple of hits in order for them to get back in plain sight. Now a lot of people are mocking the Golden Knights. This is not a good feeling for Vegas fans. And there was an article, there was somewhere on there where should the Golden Knights stop trading the first round picks? I really do think so. Eric Brandstrom, Nick Suzuki, Cody Glass, Peyton Krebs, they're all gone. And what future do you really have? I've said this before. I really do think that the Golden Knights, once the offseason was there, should have traded away Max Pacioretty. I would have gotten a lot of pushback, but I don't care. If you're not seeing what I'm seeing, yes, Max Pacioretty is giving you the regular season play, but when you see him in the playoffs, he disappears. Mark Stone definitely held himself accountable as a captain. And when everybody's not playing well, it falters the Golden Knights. It falters their chances. And it's not a great feeling to look. It's not a great sight. And I think, honestly, this is desperation mode to getting into the cup. Otherwise, this isn't going to look good for their future. And I don't even know if there is a future plan. Because once you go all in, there's no sense of turning back. There is no sure sense of turning back. I would have traded away Pacioretty to give myself picks and get at least an impactful player, not to his stature, but maybe somebody that's underrated, nobody looks a whole lot at, and still plays good. And then I would have tested the market, knowing where your salary cap is. That's something I think about if you're the Golden Knights. This is not a great feeling. This is not a good look. Losing 6 straight. I mean, my goodness, they got their asses handed to by Boston last night. And after watching that, in 5 seasons, inconsistent passing, too much puck and goes, the goaltending now is not exactly as elite as people seen it to be with Marc-Andre Fleury. And I know a lot of people have been saying that, but I would not bring him back because he's already on the brink of his career. Respectfully so. But I would seriously consider making some moves. Because this isn't something where it's lightning in a bottle anymore. You are now a part of the league, and you should be making the right moves to staying consistent to keeping up into the playoffs. If you're not, as I've said before, they missed the playoffs, you better hope it's going to be a long off season for Vegas next year. Hour 2 coming up next here live. It's the Snake Sports Talk Show.
Nah.
Hey,
Hell
Hammer.
nah.
Wow.
Nope. Kick him out.
Shit.
Wow.
Let it happen.
Kick him out of here.
What the fuck is going on?
What's up, Hammer?
What the fuck am I looking at?
Some bullshit. Toscano shoots the free throw. It bounced off the back of the rim and out.
Who's laughing over there? Is that Eric?
Fucking
Yep.
Eric.
Bro, your Lakers are fucking dumpster juice. Like, really?
Hey, I even call
Toscano
them
shoots the
dudes.
free
They're
throw.
trash, bro. We
It
suck.
goes in. 42-60, 8 minutes, 36 seconds.
Here comes Nikola Jokic. Gets
Yeah,
the
he
ball to
definitely-
Jeff Green. Jeff Green gets it back to Jokic, wide open in the corner. Austin Rivers, and that is a three-pointer by Austin Rivers right there.
I mean, if y'all feel like playing some motherfucking defense, now's the time. What the fuck?
Live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts right now.
I hope all of you guys are having a fantastic Friday today as we are live back in the studio, Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and so many other platforms. And you guys can like, follow, and subscribe and hit the bell button for all of the latest notifications. And yes, of course, if only somebody can end up playing defense, that's how I feel about the Golden Knights right about now. But we've had a lot of really good stuff. Key in the building joined us here on the interview as well. And yeah, great stuff as far as for Philadelphia goes. And like I said, I thought it was a great feeling watching James Harden and just seeing exactly how happy that he looks right now, being a part of the being a part of this atmosphere with the Philadelphia 76ers. Honestly, I think it really, really, really stands out. And like I said, I think Philadelphia, this is a championship or bust for them. And I do think a lot of really good things, maybe even toward the long term, would look even better for the Sixers moving forward. And I truly think that if we get to a position where the Sixers or even Milwaukee, Miami, I mean, those I think are my teams. I'm going to be having it on the bottom of the hour. My playoff prediction between the West and the East, because this is only the first part. Remember, anything could change. But I figured I'd have some fun with it for the NBA playoffs because we're going to be very, very close for it. But like I said, I'm not taking that back. I really, really do think, the Eastern Conference is going to be a lot better to watch than I think the Western Conference would be. I've seen a lot of these teams right now, and they're playing much better basketball. And unfortunately, for a lot of other teams who made the playoffs and are close to not even making it this year, I mean, it was a complete fallback. So I'm excited to see what the East will look like. All right. I wanted to speculate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a second because of the fact of, and we haven't even talked a whole lot about it, but remember a few things about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as to why they brought in Tom Brady. Okay. 20 years and is one of the greatest players to even play the game. The smartest one. Doesn't have to take physicality. Like, it doesn't have to be a physical, skill. It was more of mental, competitive skill. That's what Tom Brady possessed. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers was the destination for Tom that he felt like could be much better. Rob Gronkowski followed him. A bunch of players followed him. And now Tampa's won a championship. And they make it into the playoffs again, beating the Eagles, losing to the Rams, And now Tom has retired. Now there's a lot of speculations for what the Bucs are going to do for this next up and coming season. And let me just tell you this. Like anything, I'd honestly would say hit the refresh button if you're Tampa. Because ultimately, everything was set for short term, not long term. That's what this was settling. And they got to think about quarterback. They got to think about what their running back situation is going to be. I thought the defense kind of took a little bit of a step back. There's a lot to think about it for Tampa. And I thought this was all a short-term thing. And Bruce Arians is the type of guy, very laxed, and is a guy that is a risk it, no biscuit person. Tom was not really that type. He was very strict. He was very competitive. He was a guy that had some type of structure that was standing up everybody. And it all happened for 1 year. 1 year. And you're now seeing Tampa's colors. It's the reason why that they haven't even won another Super Bowl since then. Because remember, do you remember the very first Super Bowl that they won against the Raiders in 2002 with Brad Johnson as their quarterback? John Gruden was a head coach. Warren Sapp, John Lynch. I mean, there was a ton of talented players. But Tampa Bay was never really like championship island in the NFL. They were more of South Beach. Like you're out there on the beach side, you're enjoying a cocktail, you're chilling your feet right up on the sand, or you're sitting up on a chair, you got a little umbrella in your drink, and you're just enjoying vacation. And the Buccaneers, they win the 1 year in 2002, and then they win again with Tom Brady as their quarterback. And everybody bought into it. But now Tom's retired, and he wants to enjoy his retirement with his lovely modeled wife, his kids, and it's a bright future for him. And he gets to spend enough time with family. And I get it. Tampa's got a lot to think about, too, with Chris Godwin hitting the free agent market. And I do think they need to shift a lot of pieces because they bought so much into it that now they've got to start moving a couple pieces. I do love Devin White, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and even Antoine Winfield Jr. There are several pieces that I would still keep on this roster, and the rest of them that I would at least move, shift, and maybe work myself into through the draft. And finding a quarterback nowadays is a dime a dozen. This is why when I looked at Carson Wentz is going to get traded or released out of Indianapolis, dumb idea. Russell Wilson's going to play his final year in Seattle, and right now Washington is pushing heavily in his last year of his contract to going and acquiring him. And I just truly think that Tampa Bay, and they got several options. I do like Kyle Trask. I would have at least given this kid a try because he's played under Tom Brady now for quite some time. And I loved watching him in Florida with him, Kadarius Toney, and even Kyle Pitts. I thought Florida was very impactful in college football, and Kyle Trask was an underrated talk quarterback that nobody even paid attention to. And I think wouldn't that be such a massive story for Tampa if Kyle Trask was very successful? Like, I think it would completely fill the void. They may make the playoffs in a couple of years. Super Bowl's questionable. But I think making the playoffs and staying consistent would be just exactly the thing for Tampa. Because you got to look at the NFC. The NFC needs to get younger. The only ones right now that you're dealing with is Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, who's inconsistent. There is not a whole lot of youth movement. And look at this draft this year. I smell it to be NFC wants quarterbacks. NFC wants quarterbacks badly. Malik Willis is a big name right now after what we saw from him that he showcased in the scouting combine. You've got Sam Howell. You've got Carson Strong. You've got a couple of other really good quarterbacks, but it's not as deep as it was in the last 3 seasons that we've seen quarterbacks out of the draft. Like the most impactful draft, it's done now. And I think Malik Willis, I think maybe Carson Strong, Kenny Pickett, and a couple of others would be those quarterbacks. I don't really see any of the other quarterbacks that are on this draft board be as impactful right away. I would rather you let them sit and learn for 1 or 2 years and then be able to give the reins to them. Because if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers and Carson Wentz is out there up on that board, I would be doing whatever it takes to end up getting it if that's what Indianapolis really chooses to do. Get Kenny Pickett and have him learn, and at least he stays in Pittsburgh. He knows the town, knows the weather, and he doesn't even have to move far. Or if you're Denver, you just go and get yourself a quarterback, and maybe if you want to try this thing again, be my guest. But I think in the NFC, the Panthers need to start looking at quarterback. The Saints need to seriously look at quarterback. Tampa's questionable between either using Kyle Trask, maybe going and getting possibly a Jimmy Garoppolo, or maybe even, a Carson Wentz, whatever the case may be, or if you want to try this draft. There's so many possibilities and so many options in the NFC, but it needs to get younger. It has to get younger. You cannot sit and tell me that, we'll be fine with it. The NFC has gotten so old that the only one lasting there is Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. Those are the only 2 quarterbacks in that conference. The rest of them, I can honestly say, outside of Kyler Murray and outside of Russell Wilson, there's a lot of them that are very much a little bit young and immature. Let's be honest here. You really think I want to trust my franchise with Dwayne Haskins, and I really want to trust my franchise with potentially Jameis Winston? Or even if you're out there in the NFC East where you've got Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke, like at least Jalen Hurts made the playoffs. And Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, like I said, I don't think moving Amari Cooper smart. I think it's a bad idea. But, at least I could trust those quarterbacks. In the NFC North, all you have is Aaron Rodgers. And you've got Justin Fields. I wouldn't give up on Justin Fields at all for Chicago. I think they're right where they want to be and start building around him. That's what I would do. And if you're Detroit and you're Minnesota's got to look for a better quarterback, honestly. I like Kirk Cousins, but I don't like him enough where I trust him in prime time. I really don't. So Tampa's really got to hit the refresh button and look at your division. New Orleans, Sean Payton, and Drew Brees are gone. Tampa now and Tom Brady is retired. Sam Darnold is young and inconsistent, and I think he's a little bit reckless too. And then you've got Matt Ryan and the Falcons. That's not a very strong division. That is a very abnormal division in the NFC. That's why I'm like, the AFC has all their fun. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr. I mean, they've got a lot of options. And the NFC, they got to get younger. That's why I'm like, Tampa may need to hit a refresh button. Carolina needs to reconfigure and probably refresh their button because this definitely doesn't seem to be working as much, and they need to get a lot better at their quarterback position. They've got such great playmakers, but what is it going to take? I have no idea. But that's where I am, at least with some of these teams. And that's exactly how I would be feeling right now with Tampa Bay. They got to hit this refresh button. This is really interesting. I'm going to shift here, but I've been watching at least bits and pieces of college basketball while, of course, in my favorite time of the year in March. And as you know, I'm a few days away until I'm 27. And every time when I get closer to my birthday, it's always fun when I watch March Madness. I've looked at every single team right now in college, and there's been a couple of them that have really pointed out to me that I think this looks very competitive. And as the rankings stand right now, this is what I'm looking at. From 1 through 15, and there's a tie. Gonzaga, Arizona, Baylor, Duke, Auburn, Kansas, Kentucky, Purdue, Providence, Wisconsin, Villanova, Texas Tech, Tennessee, Houston, Arkansas, and then USC that ties it. I look at every single one of these programs, and you cannot tell me that this is not the perfect year for Gonzaga. I honestly think it has to be. Because I like Arizona, but I've got some serious questions about them. Baylor's a really good team that they've won a championship in the past. They're the previous ones that won this tournament. Duke, this is the last hurrah for Coach K. And then there's Auburn, Kansas. But there could be other teams that could be sneaking in. Villanova could be sneaking their way. Wisconsin would be a sneaky team. I'd never count those programs out. But if I looked at the entire March Madness bracket, you can't tell me this isn't fit for Gonzaga to win the championship. I mean, dead serious. Because if I looked all over right now on this whole map, I mean, this has got to be very exciting. I watched so many of these games, and I watched a couple of these players. And honestly, let's just really put Gonzaga on this table. In the last few years, I've watched this program play. This program has been very superb. They are the closest ones every year with no cigar. I thought last year would have done it. You know, when you watch Jalen Suggs and a couple other really impactful players, Gonzaga always seems to be so close but no cigar. And yet they produce really good players out of that program. Out of all these teams right now, you can't tell me this isn't fit for Gonzaga to finally win the Final Four and to at least win the national championship. I mean, Duke right now is on their last hurrah. I don't know how they're going to look after Coach K is done. And as far as for the other programs in the nation, Wisconsin, with obviously Greg Gard and all the players there, they produce some really, 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 really talented players. Baylor's so much better. Villanova sneaks in. I mean, I don't know how sold I am on Providence, but there are several players you look at from top to bottom. And there's no other program right now that I trust other than Gonzaga. And Gonzaga has tried for years now. I've watched them years ago growing up. I've watched Gonzaga seriously make a lot of changes into the program to get better. They just never had the opportunity, or they've come up short, whether it's against a Duke, a Kentucky, a Baylor, or Wisconsin, or Villanova, any of one of those premier programs, they've always come up short. Even at the time when Roy Williams was coaching in North Carolina. Like, this has to be the opportunity. If Gonzaga can't pull this off, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. I think this has been such a superb program, and I think they've done very well with every single one of these players. I mean, they're more like gentlemen, but it's unfinished business from here on out. This is why I think this is prime for Gonzaga to win this thing. If it's not, I don't know. I mean, you cannot look at this March Madness bracket and think it's not there for the taking. Like, it doesn't, it wouldn't. Could you imagine if Gonzaga got eliminated in the very first round? You know what the headliner is going to be? You already know. This is why I'm like, I'm not doubting them. I think if Gonzaga does not win their way, if none of this goes their way and they don't win the tournament, you know what the headliner is going to be that morning. You know exactly what that's going to look like. And Gonzaga's program has tried for years and years and years. I think this should be the time to finally put their big boy pants on, and it should be time to start striving for a championship. All right, coming up next here, as we're close to closing on in, I'm going to be discussing my predictions for the NBA playoffs, and it'll be the first one since we are now post All-Star game, and we're going to be close right now to heading into the NBA playoffs. And I'd like to kind of pick around and fool around a little bit with this bracket. I think it would be a lot of fun if the playoffs ended up starting today, and that'll be my best for last for the rest of the day. All right, so as I've said before, guys, don't delay. Take advantage of this great opportunity. There's a great app that's out there right now on the Google Play and the App Store for all of you sports lovers, competitive bettors, and everyone in between. You guys love sports, and you guys love betting, and you guys love hanging out with your boys, having a cold one, and watching sports. There's just the app to do that straight from your phone through Google Play and the App Store called SuperDraft Pro. And SuperDraft Pro has now introduced the SuperDraft Pro Sports Book, and they're official partners of Caesars Entertainment. The Sports Book now allows you to end up betting games based upon every single bet line. There's also player prop bets that you guys could also end up challenging yourself to. And then, of course, as usual, the fun game as well with the championship picks where you can do your daily fantasy, pick all your players, and win daily fantasy contests every single day of the week. You guys love sports. You guys love winning money and so much more. And you could also win money sharing the app as well with your friends, coworkers, and family, and much, much more. And there's many prizes and many different cash prizes that you guys could be winning daily of the week. Go online to superdraftpro.com. Click on the link that's there on the bio. Sign yourselves up and say Jake the Snake sent you. Superdraftpro.com. That's superdraftpro.com. All right, folks. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank every single one of you guys for jumping on here on the Spotlight Sports Network and on the Snake Sports Talk Show. I really do appreciate all of you guys for being here with me today. Oh man, it was such a long day, but I'm ready for things to end here today. So my best for last, of course, I've been checking out a lot of the NBA playoffs, and I love exactly all that I'm looking at right now, and it's very, very competitive. I'll be bringing up the playoff picture right at this moment, and just break down exactly what I think. Because a lot of these teams right now, as I've said before over and over again, I am really liking where the Eastern Conference is really looking like, and a lot of teams have played competitively. So here we go. So we're going to end up starting, first of all, with the Western Conference if the playoffs started today. Like I said, things could change very easily. And I'm not, like I said, anything could really truly happen. And this is health-wise, competitive skill. This is what I look at right now. If I look at exactly how the Eastern and the Western Conference right now, for what I see in these type of matchups and scenarios, I am really interested to see how the West really will pan out. But I think in the Eastern Conference, I know exactly what I'm getting. I know exactly what I'm going to get here. So, as I look at right now, I'm going to be taking a look at all of these teams. And let's see here. Let's see. Trying to see exactly where I can get the playoff picture. Doesn't seem to have it from here. But I'll definitely take a look at it. I have it here on my phone. So I'll start with the West, and that is the Lakers against the Trailblazers. So looking at this matchup, this is an obvious win right now for the Lakers. If you really want to be truthfully honest, I think Portland right now is done. Damian Lillard is hurt. They are truly going to start looking for they're going to start looking for new pieces during the offseason somehow, some way, because Damian Lillard says he's not going to end up leaving Portland. I truly believe Damian needs to look elsewhere if he truly wants to win a championship in Portland. But I do think the Lakers would make it through, so that would make them the winners in that bracket. And so that leaves me now with the Timberwolves and the Clippers. Now, it's very, very interesting because that means now that the Lakers beating the Trailblazers in this series, you got the Wolves and the Clippers. Either one of these teams, they're going to have to either face the Lakers or they're going to have to face the Warriors. One way or another. And either one of these teams, because they'll have to be this is what's so interesting about this in-play tournament stuff, because a lot of it is guaranteeing their rights into the lottery draft, and a lot of it is they've got potential players that could very much be impactful during the playoffs. But if I had to think of the Timberwolves and the Clippers right now, the Clippers, I'd honestly think it's close, but I do think the Clippers might end up making it through against Minnesota. And I think Minnesota would be facing Golden State. Now, they'll be facing the Lakers. So I think the Clippers will be facing the Warriors. This is just how super confusing this is. So that means Lakers against the Timberwolves. And here's the thing. Clippers right now have been playing really, they're a kind of team that just scratches my head. Because no Kawhi Leonard all year long. Paul George hasn't shown to be very, very healthy. And my honest opinion with it, I mean, Minnesota could be giving the Lakers some serious, serious problems. But we know that the playoffs are very, very different. And I think, honestly, with the Timberwolves losing to the Clippers, this is actually a pretty good thing for Minnesota, because of the fact of now you got Steph and the Warriors. So now you've got the Lakers and you've got the Clippers facing off, because then the Lakers win through that. The Clippers move on as the loser in that bracket. So that means they got to play in order to play Phoenix. And I seriously think with how the Clippers and Lakers have played out all throughout this year, I think this is done for the Lakers. Too much inconsistency. Not really anybody that I could truly trust in this roster that makes me feel like this team now, they've got to blow it up. By the time it's the offseason, they got to blow it up. They've got to start getting younger. There's just nothing that they really have left in the tank. So that leaves me with Suns, Clippers, Jazz, Mavericks, Grizzly, Nuggets, Warriors, Timberwolves. So that's what it leaves me with in the West. So that's locked in. Now let's go to the East. I have the Hornets and the Hawks. And I'll be honest, I like my chances with the Atlanta Hawks. I think truthfully, Charlotte, they've made it close, but they haven't quite got exactly what they need to in order to get over the hump. They're a very good team. Don't get me wrong. I think they're a lot better than some teams some teams you'd look at in the East. But the Hawks, they've been in the playoffs last year. They made it all the way to the Eastern Conference, and there has been some really, really good showings from them. And again, it differs from the regular season into the postseason. So I'm going to take the Hawks. They'll beat the Hornets. That leaves me with Raptors and Nets. So I truly think the Raptors would beat the Nets. And that's my hot take there. I think the Raptors would end up beating the Nets, and they'll go and play Chicago. Now, will it be easy for Toronto to playing against the Bulls? No. But Brooklyn right now, Ben Simmons is hurt. Kevin Durant is on his own island. Kyrie Irving, too much inconsistencies. That's why I think they'll go and play the Hawks. And the way that I would see it, I think Brooklyn may have a shot at beating Atlanta with the way things have been looking. So even if they lost it, that's a wake-up call for Brooklyn. So I would have them lose to the Raptors. The Raptors will move on and play the Bulls, and then the Nets would play the Hawks, and I think the Nets would beat the Hawks. I love Trae Young, and I like what Atlanta's been doing, but Kevin Durant has been in the middle of this thing, and no, I don't think they'll get further into the playoffs. I think that's as close as they can get. So that leaves me with Heat, Nets, Cavs, Bucks, Sixers, Celtics, and Bulls and Raptors. So let's go back to the West. So as I've said before, I've got the Suns and Clippers. I've got the Jazz, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Warriors, Timberwolves. So those are my teams set. So let's start with the top tier, Suns and Clippers. This is an easy one for the Suns. I think it would be a 4-1 series. I do think that the Clippers would show some signs that they can be a competitive team. But if they had Kawhi Leonard that was healthy and that could get him through, it would have been a completely different story. I seriously think it would have been a completely different story. And Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, they want to run this thing back. They want to stay competitive. And so I truly think that the Suns will beat the Clippers and they'll move on. So that leaves me with Jazz Mavericks. And I think this is actually a very interesting matchup between the two. You're getting Donovan Mitchell or Luka Doncic. Luka cannot stand playing against the Clippers, more or so because of Kawhi Leonard. But they don't have to play him. They'll be eliminated against, the Phoenix Suns. So, and the Jazz right now, they traded away Joe Ingles. They got a few upgrades. But I truly think that the Utah Jazz, it will be such a close game. 7 games at best. I think you're going to get exactly what you want, and I think the Jazz will finally win their playoff series against Dallas. Look, I love Luka Doncic, but he does not have a capable 2. He doesn't have a capable 2 to help him. So I think if you look at what Utah does well, Rudy Gobert, very defensive at his position. Donovan Mitchell gives you some good shots. Mike Conley, there's veteran experience there. And I think the Mavericks need more players. They need more pieces in order for them to really get over the hump and really be an impactful team. So Grizzlies Nuggets. Now, people have told me several times about the Memphis Grizzlies and how great the Ja Morant really is. But I'll tell you one thing. I never sleep on Denver. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, the rest of what this team has done. Now, it's not exactly the same team as I remember in the last couple seasons, but you never count any of those two out. So I think this will be a best of 6. I think it's going to be a 6-game series, and I think the Nuggets will beat Memphis. So Denver will move on, and then it's Golden State and Minnesota. If you really want to be honest, the Timberwolves, they're gonna get knocked out by Golden State. Golden State has at least enough of the pieces to get past somebody like Minnesota, but I don't think they'll have enough pieces to maybe get past a Utah, a Phoenix, a Denver, or any of those. So that leaves me with, I believe if I look at this right, you would have Phoenix against Utah, and then Denver against a Golden State. I think so. Let's start with Phoenix and Utah. Another best of 7, actually. You'll be calling me crazy, but I think that's another best of 7. Phoenix, you already know, completely mopped the Clippers. The fact that they don't have exactly those pieces in play, but I do think against Utah they're going to give them their money's worth. So I think the Suns will make it through in at least 7 games, and it's going to be so exciting. Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker, but I think it's all going to come down to how Chris Paul really does pan out well in his leadership. I think it'll be great. I think this works. I think this works out well for Phoenix. Utah, very close, but not enough. So that leaves Nuggets and Warriors. I think, honestly, this could be Golden State's. I think that could be their peak. I think they're going to end up making it a best of 7 against Denver, and Denver would beat Golden State. Listen, I love Steph. I love Draymond, and I do love Klay Thompson, but there's so many questions because this is not exactly the same impactful team as I've seen in the last couple of years. Even though they made their way back into the playoffs, it's tough to say because knowing Denver's got unfinished business. So I think you get a best of 7 in this one, and the Nuggets would face then the Phoenix Suns. So that's my Western Conference right from there. Suns and Nuggets, I think, would be a 6-game series, and Phoenix makes it through and they go back into the finals. Very, 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 very hard. That's a very, very tough take for me to say that Phoenix would make it back into the finals. This is a very, very good team. DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, as we've said before, they made it into the finals last year, and they learned a thing or two. So I think they want to run it back. They want to make sure that the group themselves understood what they got last time, and they'll probably be a little better. So that leaves me now with the Heat against the Nets, Cavs, Bucks, Sixers, Celtics, Bulls, and Raptors. So the Heat and the Nets, I think the Heat would end up beating the Nets in 6. Kevin Durant is just by himself on an island, but I like what the Heat are doing. Now, Jimmy Butler's had some struggles at the 3-point line, but it doesn't matter. You have Tyler Hero, who's looked a lot better. He's having a bounce-back year. Bam Adebayo is giving you exactly the rebounds and stops. And you've got several options. You've even got Kyle Lowry. So I think the Heat right now, red hot. They're going to start things off against the Nets because the Nets right now, they win a series, but that's as far as Brooklyn could possibly go. All right, Cavs and Bucks. I see this being the Bucks in 5. Because right now I like what Cleveland is doing with Colin Sexton and a few other really good, impactful players. I think, Cleveland's done a lot better. But remember, this is a different ball game. Milwaukee in the playoffs, very, very different team in the regular season. So I think the Cavs are a fun team to watch, and this is a story, but they're going to need to build. They're going to need to build. They're going to need to build up if they make it into the playoffs. And so if they actually make it an entertaining series against the Bucks, I'd be surprised, and I probably would say Cleveland's a lot better than I thought, because a lot of people have already brushed off Cleveland very easily. But I think the Bucks would end up winning this one in 4 or in 5. Sixers and the Celtics. Now, Key in the Building and I, we were talking about this, that may be one team that could give them problems. But I think the Sixers, James Harden's going to get red hot. Joel Embiid, he knows that there's unfinished business that needs to be done. So I think the Sixers would make this a best of 6 series against Boston, because I love Jason Tatum and I do love Jaylen Brown, but there are still some few things that Boston needs to work on. Philadelphia just has the upper hand. They're a lot better than Boston is, I think, in some ways, but it still will be an entertaining series through 6. And I think Sixers fans would love to have their moment against Boston. And then finally, Bulls and Raptors. Now, call me crazy, but this will be a best of 7, because Pascal Siakam, there have been reports, about OG Anunoby, and there's still a few more that you got right now with the rest of Toronto's roster. But I think the Bulls will be much better, because we know that they have a couple of injuries. Lonzo Ball's out, but there's quite a few of some inconsistencies, but I think they'll figure it out. I think by the end of the day, Chicago's going to figure it out, and they're going to play a lot better. I think they're going to play at least a lot better. Toronto's going to show them up. I mean, that's why I think it's going to be a best of 7 series. They're going to wake them up, but I do think it'll be better for Chicago. So that leaves me with the Heat, the Bucks, and then the Sixers and the Bulls. I think the Sixers will beat the Bulls in 6. Because even though DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, there's still some signs Chicago could play well. But Philadelphia, they get through Boston in 6. They could get through Chicago in 6. I still believe it would be an entertaining series there. And I think that's where I've said Philly may be the team to get into the Eastern Conference Final, and that's exactly it. So that leaves me now with the Bucks and the Heat. Here's what's interesting about this series. So both teams actually do play decent defense, play pretty good defense. And I was very impressed last year with Milwaukee in situational basketball, because they did actually make some really good shots. That's what helped them to getting in to winning the championship. But if I really had to think very hard about this, I think honestly, I'd put my chips in on the Miami Heat in 7. Not an easy series, not an easy opponent to beat in Giannis and Chris Middleton and a couple others. I do think Miami might make it through and get into the Eastern Conference. That's a big hot take, because the people would think Milwaukee in the playoffs are very different. Yes, they are. But if I'm looking at situational basketball, I'm hoping Duncan Robinson and I'm hoping Tyler Hero would give me exactly the shots you need. That's my only hope. And I think the Heat could do that. Milwaukee, hard to go back to back in a time where they played great defense. So that's going to leave me now with the Heat against the Sixers in the Eastern Conference Final. And relatively looking at this from all ends. Now, remember, the Heat got upset last year. I think it was probably because of the uniforms. I don't know. But the Heat got payback against Milwaukee. The Sixers beat Boston and Chicago. And I truly think this may be the year for the Philadelphia 76ers to get to the finals. I truly think so. And I think it's going to say a lot about James Harden. And this will be an even sweeter moment for Joel Embiid, the one and only draft pick, because remember, they drafted Markelle Fultz. He got hurt. He's traded now. He's out to Orlando. Ben Simmons got drafted and then traded to Brooklyn for James Harden. So Joel Embiid has really been the only person. Oh, and let's not forget about Jahlil Okafor. I mean, hurt, traded away to New Orleans, ain't been the same since. So that leaves me with a Suns-Sixers NBA Finals. That's a tough one. That's a tough one for me. And like I said, that's the first one that I do, but I'm not going to end up announcing a winner up on that. That will probably be closer. I'm going to be doing this a couple more times, but that would be my first part right there. So I think recapping, Lakers beat the Trailblazers very easily. Clippers beat the Timberwolves, but the Timberwolves will be facing against the Warriors. Clippers beat the Lakers. They'll face the Suns. Suns beat Clippers. Jazz beat Mavericks. Nuggets beat Grizzlies. Warriors end up beating the Timberwolves. Then the Suns beat the Jazz. Nuggets beat the Warriors. And then the Suns beat the Nuggets. And they're the ones representing in the Western Conference. In the East, Hawks beat the Hornets. Raptors beat the Nets. The Nets face Chicago. The Raptors beat the Hawks. Or actually, the Raptors play Chicago. My bad. The Nets actually beat the Hawks, and then they lose to the Heat. Bucks beat the Cavs. Sixers beat the Celtics. Bulls end up beating the Raptors, very close. So that leaves Heat beat the Bucks to get payback. Sixers beat the Bulls. And then the Sixers beat the Heat, and they're the ones representing in the Eastern Conference. So that's my look up on that. Suns, Sixers in the finals. That'd be easier. That would be the most interesting NBA finals we would ever have. Philly against Phoenix. That's interesting. I don't know about you guys. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that feels very interesting to me. Alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap up my show here, all for today in a big, extravagant 2-hour show here. Thank you guys all so much for watching and tuning in. Like I said, like, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications to keep yourselves up to date on future shows, and even go watch a few past segments here on the Spotlight Sports Network and on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Really do appreciate it. Have a fantastic Friday. For those of you who are going to NASCAR, please be safe. Have fun. And we will be back up in the building on Monday. Take care, you guys. Have a great night, and we will see you all soon.